What if we could love the way Jesus did? Passionately, faithfully, powerfully. What if the way we love could make a difference in the world around us? What if that love looked at everyone the way God does? A love which doesn't see the past, but is consumed by a desire to see people come to know Jesus. A love which is patient and kind, not envious or prideful. A love which puts others before ourselves, chooses peace over anger. A love which protects, trusts, hopes, perseveres. Do we love like this? Do we love like Jesus? Maybe it's time to ask a simple question. How can we love better?
Hey, I'm Brad, and I can hardly wait to share today's content with you, whether you're watching us live, whether you're watching later on YouTube or through one of our social channels, or whether you're listening to the podcast. Welcome here. Today I'm going to interview a friend of mine named Carlin Anquist. She's actually the wife of Stephen, who did a lot of our kids' stuff. So we just love this family. She's a mom of two boys, Jack and Felix, who are also amazing little guys, and just love those guys so much. They just turned 8. So again, happy birthday, guys. And what I'm going to talk to her about today is how she's taking some of the things we've been learning in our messages and applying them to her life. And she's already kind of done this naturally. So I thought, oh my goodness, I need to interview her, and I would love to bring the rest of you in on that conversation. So that's what we're doing. So just to recap, a couple of weeks ago, I showed you this diagram and unpacked it. And this is a way of you for you to understand what your mission field might be and how God could use you in your various spheres in your life, your areas of responsibility or contact with people. So you can see here, you might, to talk about social media, or maybe your cul-de-sac, the people that you live next to. One of mine is the people at Superstore. I've got a relationship with a lot of the ladies there in the cash kind of world, or the Northern Hills Community Association, right? And who are some of the people in those spheres that might be the kind of people that you could reach out to, or you're building a relationship with, that might be open to hearing about some of the things that God's done in your life? And then what are some of the ideas that you could use to kind of reach those people? So one of the things I'm doing in the next couple of weeks, March 27th, is I'm offering a free webinar on dreams, night dreams, and interpreting dreams. If you haven't registered, by the way, please do that. There'll be a link in your email, or by text, or maybe a link at the bottom of this video. And we bring bread next door. Sean's been doing a lot of baking, that kind of thing. But what we're going to learn today is how Carlin took something she was already doing, a sphere that she already had, a home business, and she started to think about some ideas of how she could use that to love people and spread God's kingdom wherever she lives, works, and plays, like to spread the Eden everywhere, your kingdom come kind of mission. And then, of course, there are various people that interacted with her in that sphere, and we're going to hear a lot about it. You're going to love this story. Carlin loves Jesus, loves her family, and loves the church. And so you're going to be inspired. What I would encourage you to do as you're listening to her story is to make a note of things that you could take and maybe use in your story. Because now we're moving beyond the realm of theory and theology and actually talking about how someone's actually doing it in the real world. And of course, you're not going to have the same idea she is, maybe, probably not, but you could transfer what she's learned into some sphere in your own life. So let's listen to that interview. Hey, Carlin, good morning. And
hey,
thanks
Brad.
for joining us. Yeah, I'm really excited to tell your story today. And so thanks for making the time for everybody. I think God's going to really use that in a lot of people's lives. But I just actually want to start by asking you what your week is like this week, because it is mid-January, end of January kind of thing. So what's your world like today?
It's been stressful. Boys have been in school and out of school and in school and out of school and in school and out of school. So they're currently home for the last 2 weeks. They'll be back on Thursday for one day, and then it's the weekend, and then hopefully back for good on Monday. But I'm not getting my hopes too high. So.
For good, like they can keep them, like just make up for lost time, right? Yeah. Oh my goodness. Like I said, I'm really excited to ask you some questions and get to hopefully the meat of the story that God has been leading you through this year. I think all of us have, like, church world, business, home, parenting, school, everything, right? We've been faced with this unexpected curveball after curveball after curveball, and then this word we're probably getting sick of, which is pivot, right? But honestly, like, I really believe that God is asking his people to just let go of some of what we knew and being willing to pivot and kind of follow his lead into unexpected territory, right? So I think your story is a really good example of that. But maybe just set the table for us and just talk about your, like, the old normal, like pre-COVID. What were you up to? What was your, like, profession, and how did COVID sort of impact all that?
Yeah, so since I had my boys, so I have 8-year-old or almost 8-year-old twin boys. Since they have been in our lives, my main profession, obviously as a mom, but also as a wedding photographer. And with COVID this year, 2020, lots of weddings getting postponed, some weddings getting canceled.
Yeah.
People just not booking because they're not sure. So work has been very slow. I only actually photographed one wedding during COVID, which just was amazing. It gave me life. It was so wonderful to be able to still do at least one. And it's a passion of mine. It's wonderful to be able to connect with couples as they are getting ready to get married, and just kind of stick with them throughout several months. It's a great way to build this kind of lasting relationship with people when they're in a time in their life that's so special and unique.
Absolutely. I think you've got a real eye, obviously, for photography, but I feel like you're good at, it's not just about taking pictures for you, right? And it's not even just about capturing moments. You're actually making moments as they happen, right? And then capturing those. So I think that's really neat. And I feel like some of what God's done with you this year is an extension of that, just in a very different form, right? Yeah. So you told me that somewhere in the midst of all of this, where this can't happen and this can't happen and weddings are stopping and we can't do this and we can't do this and we can't do this and all the things we can't, you had a realization that was key and instrumental for you. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, well, I was talking with your Shauna one day, and she said something to the effect of, instead of thinking about all the things we can't do, well, what's something that you can do? And so for me, just thinking about that, and, well, what's something that I can do? Well, I can bake bread, and I can make food, and I can drop that off at neighbors' homes, or I can, if anybody needs something or needs encouragement, I can give them some practical help, just drop it on their doorstep. That's not forbidden with COVID. So that's what I started doing.
That's really cool. So as that realization kind of took hold and you started experimenting with some things and just doing what you could, what emerged out of that? This is where we're getting to your story.
Yeah. So it was in the summer that I figured that I wanted to learn how to can. So making jams and jellies that are canned so that they can stay on the shelf. Because I thought that would be a really good thing to be able to give to people at a moment's notice, because I would have it in my pantry.
Yeah.
If I hear of somebody that needs something, I have it ready to go. It's not then I'm trying to find time and rush around. If the boys are home, I have it ready to go. So I started making some jam, and I had the Fine and Dandy brand set up a few years ago. My mom and I had sold crabapple jelly, and so I figured, well, I'll post it on my Fine and Dandy page, and if I can sell a few jars, then that will help to kind of offset the costs so that I can keep making more gifts for people.
So all of this was just about, in the beginning, it's just about, I just want to be able to bless people, basically. I want to give gifts.
Yeah. And it's never like, it's not about selling necessarily. It was, if people liked it and wanted it and bought it, then I have more money that I can then go buy more and be able to bless more people and kind of multiply it that way.
So then what happened as you started doing this?
When I first started, I started having people buy. There's people that bought from me several years ago that were like, "Oh, you're back. I'm glad to see you're back." And so they'd come and buy, and then they'd come back and they'd buy more, and they'd come back and they'd buy more, and they'd come back and they'd buy more. For every time somebody in their life had a birthday or an event, they'd come and buy jam for them. And then I had one Facebook friend who saw my post, and she just offered her grapes. She grew Concord grapes in her backyard and said, "Hey, you can come pick grapes. I just asking for a $5 donation to my great nephew's GoFundMe page. He needs a new wheelchair, and so I'm trying to raise money for him."
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. I gave her $5 for his wheelchair fund, and I picked grapes from her backyard, took those and turned them into jelly. And for every jar of grape jelly that I sold, I was able to donate $2 back into the GoFundMe page. So it wasn't a huge donation. I think it was $34 that ended up coming out of that. But still, that's more than I could have done just by myself. So
right. Yeah.
That's something that I could do, was just, okay, I can take your grapes. I can spend my time turning them into something else. And then therefore people are, when people buy that, then they're able to contribute to this cause as well.
We're doing a series right now talking about God's intention with the Garden of Eden, right? And how he gives this commission to Adam and Eve to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it. You're making a comment, I think, when we were talking, or in your notes, that this kind of feels like an illustration of that, right?
For sure.
Explain how that works in your mind.
Well, to be fruitful with the grapes, I mean, it's fruit. So, but to take something and to turn it into something else that's bigger, and then turn that into something else that's bigger. So posting that about this boy's wheelchair, that got the attention of some other small businesses that in turn donated money to his GoFundMe page.
Oh, wow.
And the impact of it is much more than I would have had by myself, or this friend would have had just by herself. So
that's crazy.
Working together and just expanding and multiplying it has increased that exposure exponentially.
Totally. So then did this thing continue to grow? Like what happened over the Christmas season or the fall, or what's going on with that?
Yeah, so I had made a bunch and I posted it in this group before Christmas, just hoping to sell my stock, minus the jars that I had kind of reserved to be as gifts. And it over like the next 2 days, I just got overwhelmed with orders and was like, oh, okay, guess I'm staying up late making jam tonight. So I made a whole bunch. I got hundreds of orders before Christmas. Wow. With people coming and telling me about how they're gonna, make gift baskets for their neighbors, and they're going to put together care packages for seniors in a senior's home. And it, like, people were just coming to my home like every day to buy jam, and I got to interact with them and chat with them at the door. And it was very overwhelming, but like in a good way.
Yeah. So I just want to point this out, just in case people aren't kind of picking up on it. Baked right into the DNA of your idea was blessing people, was like just being generous. And so even the way you package things, right, is sort of like it's presented as a gift, like it's something that you can give. So like, and I just need to point this out, because you put generosity at the core, at the DNA of this thing. When people, not everyone, obviously, but everyone who so many people that picked up on this, in turn, were generous with what they purchased from you, right? So they caught the vision of that. I think that speaks to such a really neat DNA. And not that like you couldn't have been successful trying to market jam, but I think this comes with a story too. Like it's like hey, I can become part of something and giving, and that must give you a lot of joy. Like, yeah, that's really
It
cool.
does. It's really cool. I mean, some people will come to the door and just say thanks and leave.
Right.
But other people come to the door and they'll chat with me for 15 minutes about what they're doing with it and who they're planning to give it to. And it's been a really, really cool connection point.
So I know that you want to also, you have anonymity and you want to like keep a confidence and all of that, but are there any stories that you can share with us about some of the interactions you've had, or where this has led to, or that kind of thing?
Yeah, so there's one interaction that happens over Messenger. This lady just picked up from the bin, so I never actually met her in person. But just over Messenger, we were trying to interact and figure out when she was going to come pick up her box. She ended up needing it a day earlier than I had planned to have them ready. So she's asking me, oh, I don't know, can I get a refund if I can't come that day? Because they were planning to head to Edmonton to see her father-in-law, who was quite sick. And so they needed it the day before they were going to leave. So figured, okay, I can get your box done first so that you can take it with you. And then she ends up telling me all about her story, all about her father-in-law, about his sickness. And I just asked her what his name was and if I could pray for him over Messenger. And she said yes. And she was so thankful. She ended up telling me about her own journey with cancer, and just has kept in touch. Like, we've touched base a few times, just checking in, seeing how he's doing. And that's been an area that always makes me kind of nervous, because I never want people to feel creeped out by the jam lady that's pushing Jesus on them, but just to offer that connection and that care. And she was so appreciative of that, even if they're not believers, just somebody that cares about them.
Sure. And during the pandemic, we're all craving connection, right? Just someone's to be seen, to be noticed, to be cared for. I think all of us have experienced, even just people we thought were friends and we're not connecting very much. But then there's just these new people that are coming into our lives, and even just for a moment, right? So I love how you were able to, well, first of all, just see what God is up to and go, huh, right? Like, just, I think this is more than I thought. Like, again, you didn't, I don't think, from what I'm reading, you didn't have any like aspirations like that you're going to become this jam mogul and, and take the world. And not that you have, but but more just like, I'm going to start with what I have and see what happens. And then God starts to open these doors and you're like, oh, okay, Jesus, I guess I'm going through this door, right? Like, just kind of multiplying, like you said, being fruitful and multiplying. That's so neat. I was going to ask you, you said this is in some ways very overwhelming, and how has God provided for you, though, in this? Like, it's a business that's a ministry at the same time, right? Like, it's helping people give and all that stuff. But so you've been cranking out jam and processing orders and all, and talking with people, praying with some of them. Like, but how has God provided for you personally through all this?
Well, we have an endless supply of jam in our fridge and in our pantry that will sustain us when we have nothing else to eat. It's been like, it's never been I want to make money with this. I mean, there is a little bit of money that I've been able to reinvest in it to be able to continue going, but mostly it's just been in the connection. With COVID and everything, being so isolated in our homes, feeling so lonely, feeling so just disconnected. To go from that to having people show up at my house and just talking, it's been very refreshing. And it's people that I would have never met had I not done this. It's, people in my immediate community that live like 2 streets down. It's other small business owners. It's people that I knew when I worked before the boys were born, that a drive up from the south of Calgary to buy my products that I'm able to reconnect with just for a few minutes on the doorstep has been really, really refreshing. And just to know that if I can give people a little bit of joy with a gift, or knowing that my customers can take that and give joy to someone through a gift to encourage them, that's really, it makes my heart very happy.
Yeah, I bet. Now, I also know that you love Jesus very much, that you are a follower of Christ. So I want to just ask you, like, how has being a Christ follower and someone who's trying to believe in and live out the gospel, how has that informed or shaped this journey for you?
I mean, it's everything. It's when the disciples were asking, or no, who was it? Asking, who is my neighbor? And and then Jesus answered with the story of the Good Samaritan. It's just in this time, right? We can think, well, who is my neighbor? But with COVID, it's like literally, who is my neighbor?
Yeah.
Who are the people who live in the houses next to me? Who are those people? How can I serve them? How can I bless them? How can I show them Jesus' love? And that there was actually a story that I want to share about another small business owner who connected with me wanting actually to sell my jam in his online store, which isn't something I'm able to do right now. So that didn't work out. Yeah. But him and I have kind of kept in touch. We've batted around ideas of how to partner. So anyways, we've connected with each other on social media and support each other and like each other's posts and all that kind of stuff. But he asked me one day when I posted my bread recipe, he asked, well, are you going to sell bread now? I love sourdough bread and I can't find it. I don't like the kind at the store near my house. So are you going to sell it? And I was like, well, no, like I can only make 2 loaves at a time. Yeah. I don't have the capacity to sell bread. I just make it and give away it. Like I'll make 2 loaves and we'll have one for us and I'll have one to give away to friends and neighbors. And he said to me, well, then please consider me your friend and neighbor. And I just like, okay, yeah. I will. And I will love on you like my neighbor. You're somebody that God has put in my path. And that's what he's talking about when he says, when we ask, who is my neighbor? It's the people that God puts in our path. I thought that was really cool.
That's really profound, Carlin, because I think how many of us during this season feel like maybe we haven't been beat up by people, but we've been beat up by life this last year. Good Samaritan story, right? And we feel like people are passing us by and not seeing us or not taking the time. Does anyone see me? And so that you have that heart, I think is just amazing. You've kind of touched on some of this already, but what advice would you give somebody that's maybe listening to this story? And we don't want someone to feel like guilt or pressure, like I've got to have this big successful thing, but someone who's saying, I want to make a difference. I want to reach out. I just can't, or I don't know what to do, or like I feel stuck. Like what I'm praying that God uses this story, right? That to inspire people to dream with God. And what could it be? So what advice might you share with someone? It could be something really simple even.
I would say just take a step. I think I'm the kind of person that I like to think through everything beforehand, and I can shoot down my own ideas even before I start, because I see all the things that can go wrong, or all the things that, well, if it can't be this, then why even bother trying? Whereas with this, it's like, I didn't set out to own a jam business. I didn't set out to do this full time. It's just, I took a step because I made jam and I thought it tasted good and I thought other people might like it. So,
apparently they agree.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just to take a step and to not downplay it if it doesn't turn into something bigger, because we don't always see the effects, right? Like I've had some stories come back of people receiving their gifts, but not everybody. It's not like I'm hearing the impact that it's having every single time.
No.
Whereas if you're going somewhere and all you do is just smile at somebody, or you're kind to the cashier at the grocery store, you don't know how that's going to impact them. So we can often downplay it.
Yeah.
But just to take a step and do what you can do today. See where God takes it.
Yeah, that's awesome. As I was thinking about your story, I mentioned this to you. I was thinking about a story from 2 Kings chapter 4 with Elisha the prophet, and there's a widow that's in need. And basically this idea is this widow is like starving. She doesn't know what to do. And Elisha in verse 2 says, "How can I help you? Tell me, what do you have in your house?" So same thing you just said, like just, well, what do you have? Like, so instead of focusing on what I can't have or what I don't have, what do you have? Which reminds me again of, I think Peter and John in the temple, someone asked them for silver and gold and they said, well, we don't have any of that, but what I have, I give you, right? And so starting with that, what do you have in your house? I find this so fascinating because again, it's so linked to your story. Your servant has nothing there at all, she said, except a little oil. I just need to point out that a huge part of your business is acquiring jars, right?
Yes.
Going on the hunt to different stores trying to find jars. This is like her story too. So Elisha said, go around and ask all your neighbors for empty jars. So here she's saying, all I have is oil. Well, I can't do anything with the oil. I don't even have something to put it in, right? She's focusing on what she doesn't have. And he's trying to focus her on what she does have. So go around and ask your neighbors for empty jars. Don't ask for just a few. So don't sell it short, right? Just shoot for the moon. Then go inside and shut the door behind you and your sons. Pour oil into all the jars. And as each is filled, put it on one side. And she left him and afterwards shut the door behind her and her sons. And they brought the jars to her. She kept pouring. When all the jars were full, she said to her son, bring me another one. But he replied, there's not a jar left. Then the oil stopped flowing. And then she went and told the man of God, and he said, go sell the oil and pay your debts. You and your sons can live on what is left. I think something I just wanted to point out to people who are listening too is that there's also no guarantee that this thing that opened up for you is going to continue on the same trajectory it's been going, right? So there's a sense of, it's not that she's now found her permanent calling. I'm selling oil for a living. It's that God is moving in this particular way. And I think one of the questions I want to ask people who are watching this is start with what you have and then maybe ask, what jar is God filling? Right? Like, where does that's literally what you did. You just made some stuff and God seemed to bless it. And so you kept going and he seemed to bless that. And you're like, okay. And he seems to he's pouring more into the jars, jam into the jars, right? And so literally it's an illustration of this entire thing. So I think all of us have something as minimal as oil we don't even have a jar for. Like we can figure out like what do I have, right? And how can God use that, not to change the world, maybe just to bless the neighbor next door and then see what happens, right? Like just kind of where you started. And I love that. I love that about your story. Is there anything else, Carlin, that we've talked about a lot of stuff that you just didn't get around to saying that you really want to leave people with? Or if not, that's fine, but just wanted to ask just to make sure.
I don't know.
That's okay. I think you've said a lot, and I love what you've shared. You've got like so much practical wisdom. We just want to affirm you and bless you. And you were telling me right before this, like, you don't want this to be a sales pitch. You don't want to but if these are gifts, like these are literally things you can give to other people, so people can be part of that blessing. How would they contact you if they want to connect?
I just set up my website last week. So it's fineanddandyjelly.com. And my email address is fineanddandyjelly@gmail.com.
Perfect. That's awesome. Well, Carlin, thank you so much for sharing your story. I know that God is going to use it. And right now our wheels are turning and we're thinking, what do I have? How can God use me? And I can hardly wait to hear how even more multiplication can happen, not just with jam, but your story now is going to cause other things to come into existence. And that's the be fruitful and multiply commission that God gave us in the garden. So awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
I told you that was a good conversation. I know it's going to be inspiring to you. There'll be something. So my question is, as you reflect on this morning and what you've heard and the story and how God has been using Carlin, what is God saying to you? What's your one takeaway? Just want to encourage you to write that down. You are 42% more likely to do something with it if you write it down. I've been saying this recently. So please write it down, whether it's just on your phone or on a sticky note or whatever, and try to take that to prayer and start praying about how to love people in your sphere. Have an amazing day.